guys, welcome to the Arminian Eddie channel. This video is a continuation of a series of videos on questioning if there is a connection between the four horsemen of the apocalypse and the spread of the COVID-19 coronavirus around the world in 2020. Now, with the onset of the race riots in the past month, let's consider that movement as well now. I argued in my previous video that the coronavirus could be related to the fourth horseman, which is often associated with disease and death due to being a pale color. However, many of you challenged me in the comments section of that video, saying that it makes more sense that the first horseman could be representing the coronavirus due to the fact that he wears a crown, and the word corona is from the Latin for crown. Now in Revelation 6, this is what John writes. I watched as the Lamb opened the first of the seven seals. Then I heard one of the four living creatures say in a voice like thunder, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. Now traditionally, it is thought that this is the Antichrist, because he rides a white horse, he's trying to impersonate Christ, who will, by the way, ride a white horse later in Revelation, and I argued this point in my last video. I also saw the bow that he carried, which by the way has no arrows associated with it, it's just an empty bow basically. I saw that as a sign that the Antichrist would be a conqueror, and he would conquer with a false sense of peace, hence no arrows required. And that sure sounds like our impression of what the Antichrist would be like, fooling a lot of people, including Christians. However, many of you argued in the comments section of that video that the bow represents the stealth way that the coronavirus is spreading and killing people worldwide. Instead of flinging obvious arrows, this conquest is accomplished without weapons, but rather it is a silent killer. Those are pretty good arguments, and you've got me thinking about that. I still think the rider of the first horse is the Antichrist, but let's assume that some of you are correct and the first seal was opened in late 2019 and early this year in 2020, releasing the COVID-19 coronavirus onto the earth. Then, are the recent protests and riots over race a result of the second seal being open? Some of you are now saying that in a lot of comments. Let's look at verse 3 of chapter 6 of Revelation. When the Lamb opened the second seal, and remember this is a scroll and he's opening seals in the scroll, so the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." Then another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given power to take peace from the earth and to make people kill each other. To him was given a large sword. So certainly people are killing each other in the U.S., unfortunately, during these riots and protests. However, although there are protests going on around the world, the killing seems to be mostly relegated to the United States. I've seen a lot of protests and signs and footage from around the world, but I'm not clear that I'm actually hearing people dying in the process the way they were here with the rioting. So this rider is supposed to take peace from the earth. Being this is summer 2020, perhaps there's still more to unfold. We are right in the middle of this thing. But we still have a long way to go to get to what we are told in verse 8, after the third and fourth seals are opened and the third and fourth horsemen are released. It says in verse 8, they were given power over a fourth of the earth to kill by sword, famine, and plague, and by the wild beasts of the earth. Some think this reference to 25% of the Earth's population perishing is a cumulative result of damage from the first four seals in total. Others think this is a reference to just the fourth seal and the pale horse. Interestingly, the reference to verse 8 to, quote, wild beasts of the earth certainly conjures up images of the wet markets in Wuhan, China, and the exotic animal trade that occurs in that area that is being blamed or is likely the source in some way of this virus being released on the world. So wild beasts of the earth in connection with coronavirus is an interesting connection. Even if the virus came from the lab in Wuhan, its origins would still be from bats or other animals. Could these be the wild beasts of the earth mentioned in Revelation? Or could this be a reference to carnivorous animals simply roaming the cities due to the human population decreasing and harming people they encounter? That would be the devouring that was going on by the wild beasts of the earth. That would seem to make the most sense for the wild beasts of the earth reference. We certainly saw footage of animals wandering through cities during the lockdown here in the US. I don't recall that these animals were carnivorous animals devouring people or anything, but it does point out that if humans go indoors and leave the cities, abandon the cities, and so forth, that the animals will start re-emerging from the wilderness type areas. So an interesting thought. So back to the 25% of the human race perishing in Revelation 6:8. The current population of the earth is 7.6 billion people. If you took 1/4 of the earth to be killed, that would total 1.9 billion people. The last time that we had a viral pandemic was in 1918 to 19. That was the Spanish flu we keep hearing about. That killed an estimated 50 million people worldwide and 675,000 in the United States. These numbers translate into 3% of the world's population and 0.64% of the US population. So the coronavirus will have to be a lot worse than the Spanish flu if we are going to start getting close to 1.9 billion people dying worldwide. Now, of course, it could be that most of the deaths will actually occur during the third and fourth seals, or maybe even exclusively just from the fourth horseman. So that would get us closer to 25% of the Earth's population being destroyed if the COVID connection is with only the first horse and we have, much more to go. So, is the COVID-19 coronavirus being brought to us by the first horseman of the apocalypse? And are the race-related riots and protests we are experiencing brought to us by the second horseman? COVID has many features that match the description of the first horseman's coming, but the riots/protests that are occurring mainly in the United States and a little bit worldwide don't seem to have the impact and scope that we read about of the fiery red horse and its rider, who was given power to take peace from the earth and to make people kill each other with a large sword. So I would say maybe for the first horse, but probably not for the second horse. However, the rioting and protests are not over yet, so perhaps more intense events will be unfolding as we continue on in 2020. So what do you guys think? Leave a comment below, let me know your thoughts, and regardless of how we interpret these horsemen of the apocalypse, through these tense times so far in 2020, may God grant you grace and peace.